Okay, are we ready to start? Okay, one minute. All right, good to go. Hi, everybody. How's it going? Very nice to be here with you today. This is a hello. Hi. I think we're having a nice fireside chat. Very special guest with me today, Luke Flampton, CEO of Tokeny, and most importantly, we are the two co-founders, directors, and presidents of the ERC-3643 Association. Luke, would you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm a bit on the spot,
Yes.
but it's fine. I know the topic, so hopefully it will be interesting for you. So my name is Luke, indeed, and for 9 years I'm in the tokenization space. I founded Tokeny, tokeny.com, which is one of the largest white label tokenization platform. And step by step, we created this suite of smart contracts for compliant tokenization. And it became ERC-3643 when we open sourced it and created this non-profit association with Dennis to make sure that this standard can be adopted by everyone and especially by financial institutions. Now my company has been acquired by Apex, which is a large financial group. So now we also have all the services to tokenize assets and the reach, because now we can really target very large players and tokenize the world finally, because for 10 years we are trying and now finally it's coming.
And you have some news, right? I'm not sure if the audience is aware, but we just had a big announcement with Apex.
Yeah, last week, actually, Apex, so this large financial group, so it's like a big fund manager. They administrate $3.5 trillion of assets, which is approximately the size of the crypto market today. And last week, they committed to tokenize $100 billion of assets by June 2027, so in a bit than a year, with ERC-3643, of course. So we will onboard all of their clients in this standardized framework to make sure that everything is tokenized in a proper way, in a compliant way, proven, audited, and standardized. And it's really the key starting point. If we have a good catalog of tokenized assets, of real assets with real investors and real value, we can start building the DeFi protocols and ecosystem around it, and it's exactly what you're doing now.
Yeah, and just by a show of hands, who's heard of ERC-3643 before? Oh, a majority. Wow, we've done our job. Wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Well, thank you.
We'll prefer the T-Rex protocol name.
Yeah, we nickname it T-Rex in case 3643 is too hard to say, Luke. You know, it's kind of, you know. But 3643 is a monster now. I mean, from when we started 3 years ago, the association, our view was, it was a complex topic. We wanted to engage different regulators around the world. And I think some stats that you guys have heard, and we have some new stats for you, is we have over 140 institutional members. We have the largest depository in the world and 2 of the largest fund admins in the world. We have almost a dozen investment banks and institutional providers, some major financial infrastructure providers, law firms, 7 different blockchains, 8 different blockchains. So it's a quite diverse ecosystem, both of DeFi and TradFi. We are regulated, which when I say regulated means, you know, we've gone to the regulator, we've gotten approval implicitly or explicitly in 25 jurisdictions around the world. You know, the 3643 team is small, but we're really well dispersed. I think we almost have global coverage. I think the only countries we're not explicitly in now was it Japan, Korea, Australia, Indonesia, India, Canada, and not many others.
Actually, Australia, India, we have some clients. There are some players who used it, who use the protocol already. Japan and South Korea, it's a bit more.
Yeah, we have to go to Japan. That's this year. And then, of course, you know, we really had a lot of success in the U.S. last year with the Securities and Exchange Commission, which you were part of with me there. So, you know, we actually presented to Chairman Gensler in 2024, and at that time we had 80 members, and not a single member wanted to join that call. In fact, I got some pretty harsh emails from lawyers saying, please don't fucking mention our blockchain, thank you very much. I wonder why. And I think, I mentioned that because I think it colors correctly the animosity towards regulation. I mean, regulation is almost like a four-letter word, and it, elicits gnashing of teeth and growling. And I think that's totally right. Actually, I think it's completely fair. I think for the ecosystem that we have, it's a spectrum, right? So you have some cypherpunks here who are like, ooh, regulation, I'm scared. And then you have us who are like the most tradfi, suit-wearing people you can imagine, and are stupid enough to go to the SEC. And stupidity prevailed, I would say, because we had the opportunity last year to present to the SEC Crypto Task Force, and they didn't bite, actually. And I think this is part of the overall shift that we're seeing on the ground. And I think also, the work you've done with EWPG in Germany and Luxembourg is quite profound. But I see a lot of crap on crypto Twitter. I see a lot of crap out there, and there's what I read, and then there's the reality on the ground. And the reality on the ground is changing very violently in terms of this. I think it's also important to say, like, well, what do we say when we talk to regulators? So, Luke and Dennis, we talked to 25 regulators around the world. What are we saying? What are we saying? Ooh, let's screw Ethereum. Let's not do it. Absolutely not. We consult and work with all the foundations that we represent, the two biggest being the Linux Foundation, Decentralized Trust, that we do a lot of work with, as well as the Ethereum Foundation as well. And we are extremely sensitive about keeping with what I call core Ethereum values, which got recently memorialized into crops. And we don't believe in gatekeeping. What we believe is in getting clarity. Now, where we live in the spectrum is we try to build technology on chain that meets the regulation as much as possible. And you guys had maybe you want to talk about real quick about your work with EWPG and also with Spain and ISO on that.
Yeah, so when we started a long time ago, it was really the beginning of blockchains for governments, for regulators. And actually, we've built this framework under the European MiFID regulations, mostly working with the Luxembourg regulator, the CSSF. And Luxembourg was one of the first countries to issue new blockchain laws, thanks to that, actually. What was great to be in Luxembourg because it's a small country where everybody speaks finance, so it was quite easy to influence, to explain, and to get some concrete results. And of course, everything we've done there was, we could say, passportable, let's say, to all the MiFID rules in Europe. And once you get the European regulation, which is less clear ever, it's quite easy to export it. In the US, for example, rules for securities are tough, but super clear. So of course, when you put crypto, nothing looks clear anymore. But in comparison of European regulations, it's really clear. So we came up with this standard. We explained how we can enforce compliance, control, even on public blockchains. And very quickly, it got adopted. And now I'm very happy because we see large financial institutions using the protocol without even contacting us.
Yeah, that's BNP Paribas used the standard. And then obviously a lot of our work with DTCC as well. We were honored to be featured in the groundbreaking no action letter for the SEC. In fact, we were the only named token standard in that no action letter. It's actually one of the few no action letters to be written by the SEC on digital securities in general, which is a huge honor for us.
And maybe what's interesting for you, it's what's coming next, because yes, you can use the smart contracts. So basically, ERC-3643, it's ERC-20 on steroid. So it's a token plus other smart contracts to enforce compliance. It's quite modular. You can add other modules as you want, depending on what you try to do and what you try to tokenize. We also have a factory. So in one blockchain transaction, you can deploy the full suite of smart contracts. So it's quite easy to use, but it's not well known yet. And part of this protocol, you have the on-chain identities, you have the asset identities, you have a lot of different things like this. So now we are coming out with the next step, which is actually a layer 2, the TRX network, which will act as a cross-chain compliance ledger. and also as an app store. So by default, in this app store, you will find all the applications and service providers which are compatible with the protocol and compliant with securities regulations. So for example, you will get dApps to manage on-chain identities or to deploy tokens or to do DeFi.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of our key dApps that Luke and I are developing is, actually, let me ask you a question first. Everyone knows ERC-3643. How many of you actually either deployed or worked with the 3643 directly? One. So this is the vision. So Luke and I, we talk a lot with the members and with the ecosystem, and what we always said was, for every one large BNP Paribas, there were dozens of regular crypto cypherpunks or whatever dApp developers. They're like, hey, how do I touch something that's in institutional world and bring it in? And Luke and I really identified, I think, two key areas for the future of ERC-3643, which one is T-Rex, which will be our definitive reference chain going forward, which we just announced. And we anticipate overall the use of ERC-3643 to be north of $200 billion by next year. And that's not even counting some of our even larger pipelines. We may be well over several trillion by 2028. And I say that with like direct knowledge of people pushing things through. The second area, obviously, is 3643 being segregated to the rest of the ecosystems. So because we do all the hard work on developing compliance tech and identity and all this stuff to meet securities regulation, the cost that comes out of it is it's very hard for us to directly interact with DeFi protocols. In fact, Apex and Aave produced a really great report that I invite everyone to check out on institutional DeFi. But actually, Luke and I are thinking about this in two major ways. One, creating a reference home for 3643, and then number two, getting digital securities and assets into DeFi in a permissionless capacity. And that is our second initiative that we're calling Ascend. We're building it with some of the best developers in the world. One of them are here with Open Zeppelin, Chainlink, and with the 3643 team, which is exciting. So we have the best in class building and conceptualizing this. And the idea is very simple. You have a 3643 token, we put it into a facility, we make sure it's compartmentalized, and then you can choose either your favorite stable coin or digital twin, and then take that value and go into DeFi and get utility or liquidity. So now bridging the two realities of all this institutional stuff into DeFi and into the T-Rex ecosystem, along with Ascend is one of the flagship apps, but there's going to be a whole ecosystem of apps on T-Rex built utilizing 3643, and so that everyone here who have previously learned about the standard but really hasn't like had their hands on it or whatever can get their hands on it and actually get building.
And the point is that ERC-3643 is compatible with ERC-20 and it embeds compliance. So it's compatible with most of the DeFi protocols already, right? And wallets and DEXs, etc. But usually these tokens represent securities. And securities are kind of special. You don't have a live price. Like you cannot, like with crypto, where you check 10 different exchanges and Chainlink gives you a price and everybody agrees at the price. With securities, it's different. Sometimes you have the NAV just once per quarter or once a year. And you have way less liquidity on most of these assets. So this DeFi protocols needs to be a little bit adapted to make things work properly. So it's not really about the protocol itself, it's about the underlying assets. And for example, if you collateralized security tokens, just for as an example, normally you are still the owner. So if you transfer your token to a smart contract, you have less visibility on chain about who is the owner, right? So you need to do some adaptations like this. You can, for example, freeze the tokens in the wallet of the owner and not transfer them to the vault. So just an example, very simple, but these DeFi protocols will need some adaptation to make sure that they are suitable for the big money. Which is what
absolutely, yeah, absolutely well said. We just have a few minutes for questions, but Luke and I look at what we've done with securities with 3643, and now we're looking at vaults and collateral, and that's not easy. We have time for questions, so let's get some questions from our awesome audience. Gentleman right there, please go ahead.
Hi, great talk. Thank you. I have one question. You guys that have met a lot of regulators, what is your take on more the side of, for example, central banks? You know, are they have a link with all of that, or you, for example, talking to the SEC, which is something really outside of that circuit? You know, how this landscape and maybe the end of my question is also private versus public blockchains infrastructure, especially in Europe.
Yeah, great questions. I'll go first, and then maybe. They're very different characters, central banks and securities regulators. I think for securities regulators, it's actually a much easier conversation because the nature of what 3643 is and how many, lawyers, like James at Ethereum Foundation asked me on X the other day, like, hey, how many lawyers have looked at this? Like, the answer is thousands of lawyers. So you benefit from that. Central banks is a little more difficult because a lot of people don't like CBDCs, so central bank deposits. There's also a lot of misinformation and then also a lot of correct information. Retail CBDCs is extremely dangerous. It's a major privacy violation. But CBDCs used from an institutional levels, Fed, who cares, right? That's not really an advantage. But you have to understand, like, the conversations we have in US or Europe or in APAC are vastly different with central banks because they have vastly different needs. Some of them are, national security, heavily mandated. Everything they do, like the Fed or ECB, is huge. And then you have other central banks, like Central Bank of UAE or Central Bank of Saudi or Central Bank of Ukraine that we've done, where it's a totally different set of requirements. So they a wide vary. I think one of the great works that you're doing is on permission stablecoins, which also check that box.
Maybe a quick word about this private chain versus public chain, which is the eternal debate, of course. We've done both, so you can use ERC-3643 on both as long as it is EVM compatible, because smart contracts are in Solidity. But it is actually why now we are launching this L2. Because we all failed as an industry. We are supposed to have one blockchain, one shared IT infrastructure for everybody, and now we have 1,000. So when you are a financial institution, it's super complicated because blockchains are becoming distribution channels, kinda. Some are EVM, some not, some are private, some not. So for a player like Apex, which is mostly a transfer agent, how do you do this? You cannot tokenize on 20 different blockchains and try to reconcile everything. So you need basically a reference ledger where you synchronize everything to this ledger and you enforce your compliance rules at this level. So this is actually the TRX ledger we are launching very soon. So it's not supposed to be just another blockchain and where we try to attract the TVL or anything like this. It's just a compliance engine, a cross-chain compliance engine to make sure that you can actually tokenize in one EVM blockchain and then interconnect many subledgers.
Hi, I'm from a German asset manager from Union Investment, and I had a question. We're talking about simple security tokens, but we're having complicated security tokens like funds. Like we have underlyings and stuff like this, and you're talking about security, about identity, about compliance and everything, and fund business is more regulated than security business. So how's your protocol complying with funds and German crypto law? So it will be, I mean, it's probably your layer you have over ERC-20. It's good for us, but I still didn't take a look into it. I would like to have a discussion maybe afterwards with you more deeply. But if you make a quick comment on this, please.
I'll try to make it quick, but Apex is mostly managing funds. So actually this $100 billion they will bring is mostly funds, open-ended funds or closed-ended funds. Of course, they work quite differently, but in terms of compliance, it's same concepts. And within ERC-3643, you have the ERC-20 tokens plus compliance and control. So you can give the controls to your fund admin, basically, trying to make it super simple. And in terms of compliance rules, you can identify every stakeholder, especially investors, to enforce transfer rules, etc. So everything is there, built in at the token level directly. And then we have many partners, including Tokeny, to provide the softwares to operate this in an easy way.
For EWPG, it's public. I know the announcement's public, but I'm not sure if the actual particulars are. But that might be relevant for you. How are we on questions? We're done? All right. Well, thank you guys very, very much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for supporting.